So I don't know everything, but I do know this. Everybody here wants to grow their practice. That's why you are here. But I've also discovered that the very best way to do that, the very best way for you to grow your AUM is for your clients to do it for you. Now, of course, there's other things we can do. We can do seminars, we can do Facebook ads, we can do skywriting, we can do a lot of other things, marketing automation. But there's a saying in business that I like a lot. It's not entirely true, but it's true enough. And it says that advertising is a tax paid by the unremarkable. And what we're going to talk about today is how to, as Cody said this morning, maximize your profits by turning your clients into your greatest marketing force, to turn your clients into the ultimate sales team. Now, this is more important than we perhaps recognize. 91% influenced by word of mouth. New research just came out on Tuesday of this week that said that word of mouth is the single most persuasive way that people make decisions. Number one. Yet, here's the amazing thing. Essentially, no one in this room has an actual word-of-mouth strategy. And that's a bit of a puzzle, isn't it? Because we have a marketing strategy, a seminar strategy, maybe a social media strategy, possibly a local public relations strategy. Certainly we have a number of financial strategies, yet nobody has an actual word-of-mouth strategy. We just take it for granted. We just assume that our clients will talk about us. But will they? And if so, what are they saying? Are we actually giving them something to say? The mistake that most of us make is thinking that competency creates conversation. That if we just run a really good practice, our clients will naturally tell their friends. But that's not actually the way human behavior works. We don't talk about good because we expect good. Same is lame. What people notice and talk about are the things that are different from their existing expectations. And some of this is just science. Some of this is just how we are wired as human beings. We are wired to discuss things that are different and ignore things that are average. So if you want your clients to tell their friends about you, and you do, you have to make a choice to do something different in your practice that your clients actually notice and actually talk about. Clap your hands if you've ever been to the Cheesecake Factory restaurant. Weirdly, the front half of the room has all been to the Cheesecake Factory. Back half, also the thinner half, has not, which is curious seating pattern. Did you know that Cheesecake Factory spends 5 times less on advertising than any other restaurant in their competitive set? They spend hundreds of millions of dollars less per year than many of the other chains in that same price point. Hundreds of millions of dollars less. Talk about maximizing your profits. How do they do this? They have made a decision to do something that people notice and talk about. Here's a tweet about just that. My daughter said her English class requires 1,000 pages of summer reading, so we went to the Cheesecake Factory and I handed her a menu. True or false, the Cheesecake Factory menu is enormous. True, it's ridiculous. How enormous is it? Great question. I had my intern permanently borrow a Cheesecake Factory menu. One of the many reasons I'm looking for another intern. It turns out I had her then count the words, 5,940 words in the Cheesecake Factory menu. My new book about this topic, 53,000 words. Cheesecake Factory is 15% of a business book. They make chicken, and this is 100% true, they make chicken 85 different ways. That's just stupid. There's no need to make 85 kinds of chicken. But they do it because it is so outside your frame of reference that you notice and tell people about it. Now you might think, oh Jay, yeah, that's kind of a funny story. Cheesecake Factory has a big menu, but that doesn't build their business. Oh my friends, it absolutely does. I did a big research project when I worked on this book. We surveyed hundreds of Cheesecake Factory customers. Turns out 38% of them have, without being asked or prompted or aided, told a story about that menu to somebody else. Now I ask you a simple question. If 38% of your clients told their friends about working with you, what would that do to your business in 2019? How would that maximize your profits? And if a company the size of Cheesecake Factory can do it, you absolutely can do it. What the size of that menu is, it's a talk trigger. And a talk trigger is a strategic, operational choice that compels conversations. It compels conversations. Your clients cannot help themselves. They simply must tell somebody else about this special thing that you do that they didn't see coming. And every single one of us can and should build a talk trigger in our businesses because it brings us new customers for free. What we're talking about here is giving our clients an actual story to tell. We're talking about doing word of mouth on purpose instead of what we're doing right now, which is doing word of mouth on accident. Word of mouth on purpose. Now, in my new book, Talk Triggers, you can see I wasn't kidding about having alpacas on the cover. In the book, my co-author, Daniel Lemon, and I talk about the 4 requirements of a talk trigger, the 4 things that must be true for your differentiator to actually create conversations among your clients. Because not just everything you can dream up will work like this. It has to follow a pattern. And the first ingredient, the first requirement of your successful talk trigger is that it has to be remarkable. In the true definition of that word, which is worthy of remark. I don't know everybody here yet, but I do know this for sure. Nobody here has ever said, hey, let me tell you about this perfectly adequate experience I just had. We don't say that. Why? Because that is a terrible story. We don't tell terrible stories. We tell stories that are theoretically interesting to tell and theoretically interesting to hear. So whatever your talk trigger is, it has to be remarkable, worthy of the words required to pass along that story. Now, it doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be remarkable. There's a restaurant in Sacramento, California called Skip's Kitchen. Skip's is a very simple premise. It's a counter service restaurant. You walk to the counter, they've got a menu board. Say, I would like 2 patty melts and a chocolate shake and an onion rings. And when your food is ready, they give you a number, they bring it out to your table. We have all been to restaurants like that, except Skip's has a talk trigger. Before you pay, the person working the counter whips out a deck of cards from under the counter and fans them out face down in front of you. And says, pick a card. And you select a card, and if you get a joker, your entire meal is free, whether you've ordered just for yourself or an entire soccer team. Skip's has been in business for 10 years. They have spent a grand total lifetime of $0 on advertising. Yet, there's a line to get in almost every day, and recently Skip's was named the 27th best hamburger restaurant in America by USA Today newspaper. On average, 3 people a day win this little joker gambit, but everybody talks about it. They tell their friends, they put reviews on Facebook and Yelp and Instagram and TripAdvisor. It is the engine of their success. And in Sacramento, despite the fact that, as you can see, the sign at Skip's Kitchen very clearly says Skip's Kitchen, In Sacramento, people call it that Joker restaurant. That's when you know you've got a talk trigger that works. Doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be worthy of remark.